IT operations. So I said earlier that we would be talking about IT operations, and here we go. So um, best of intentions, right? IT operations responsible for patching systems, monitoring and managing configuration change over time, vulnerabilities, detecting vulnerabilities as quickly as possible so that they can do the appropriate mitigation, backing backups, making sure the backups are working, that they're going offsite on a regular basis, all the normal IT type work that is being done on the enterprise side in order to make sure that the enterprise is more resilient, more secure, more able to protect itself from the inevitable bad guys that are out there. OT, of course, that are, on the OT side, we're looking at that and we're saying, whoa, that's a lot of change you're doing there. That's not going to work. It's just antithetical to work on the OT side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when I look at the struggles with IT operations working with OT, the couple things that really stand out for me as common challenges is from a best practices standpoint, IT operations is probably 10 to 15 years ahead of OT.
Mm-hmm.
Things that IT operations considers remedial are just now being introduced into OT security. So when you look at that perspective, a lot of times there's a struggle with why aren't you doing it the way we do it on the enterprise? Well, because we only introduced networking 20 years ago. You guys have had networking for 40 years. I mean, it's things like that. And then the other is understanding that the shift in our focus on protocols becomes a challenge too. Most of the protocols we focus that Ethernet is just a transport mechanism. And I think it's a lot of times there's a challenge that if I do all the tools that work in IT that focus very heavily on understanding the TCP IP stack, don't necessarily apply well when I go over to, formally serialized protocols now using Ethernet strictly as a transport mechanism. So if I'm only looking at the components that focus on the enterprise side, I'm missing a lot of my threats and not understanding the operational environments that are behind. But on top of that, when I look at those kind of as a whole, when I put the mandates and standards that have worked in IT and I try to apply them to OT without making adjustments or making considerations for the differences, that's where I see the big disconnect. Most often when I try to, and I always can pick on the one simplest one I always love is USB sticks. It's the bane of every IT operations guy's existence. They push very hard not to allow them, but you go tell an OT operator, I'm not going to allow any more USB sticks.
Yeah.
And after the laughter subsides, you'll find out that most of the way things move around, configuration changes, programmatic updates are through USB stick. And so you're really trying to make a philosophical change for something you think is just a policy enforcement. And that's always a lot of times where I see a lot of the disconnects is trying to understand that there's a philosophical approach difference. It's not just we do it this way because we want to, we do it this way because we have to. This is a focus of what we do, and understanding that it's not by choice.
Of all the roles we're talking about today, this is the one that I have a lot of compassion for, but this is the role that honestly would benefit the most from open communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
Typically there's keep them at arm's length, don't interact. But in reality, the IT operations person is wanting what is best for the organization. They were trying their best to secure the environment. They just don't typically have a good understanding of the OT space. So this is a good opportunity to communicate with them and educate them. And education is the key word here, I think. The fact that a known vulnerability may be in an OT environment and that it may be consciously determined to leave that vulnerability there and only document it until the next maintenance window in 6 to 12 months, and then we'll remediate it then. I mean, that will take an IT operator's head and make it spin. But that's okay. That they need to understand why and how, and that's all. So that in the future, they'll be prepared. They'll know. They'll understand. They'll have the context that they need for the OT space.
Absolutely. And I think the word I'd use for IT operators a lot of times is empathy, because 10 years ago, really everything below that OT firewall, that perimeter boundary, was a black hole to them. Right? That wasn't their purview. They weren't told not to touch it. It's not their infrastructure. Stay away, not your role. Then as we started to see modernization efforts, industry 4.0, digital transformation, we can all throw our buzz terms of the day, but really modernization efforts occur. What we quickly saw was all of a sudden that black hole disappeared. Hey, I need someone who understands routing. I need to understand someone who understands policy configurations. I need someone, well, that person's in IT, and all of a sudden that black hole's been opened up, and the infrastructure that they have to support doubled, tripled, quadrupled in size overnight. But they tried to apply what they knew worked, and they've been given an almost impossible task to try to apply what worked in enterprise to the OT overnight, right? And we're talking, this only started occurring 5-10 years ago. Really, we started seeing that blended IT operations person working in the OT, trying to get visibility, trying to deploy security controls down to OT. That only started to happen fairly recent in the technology life cycle.